Families are the building blocks of a nurturing society. As Nelson Mandela famously said, the strength of a nation is defined by the treatment of its children. That treatment is profoundly affected by the kind of parenting children receive. The way we raise and care for our children are related to almost every important social outcome we may wish to change, regardless of where we live or the circumstances under which we raise our children. The everyday, moment-to-moment interactions between parents and their children influence a wide range of human development outcomes. Whether it's the early wiring of children's brains in infancy, through to their language, communication and social skills, whether it's their relationships with teachers, with peers, how well they do at school, their mental health, and their life opportunities. Parenting is crucially important. Most of us have some inkling about the kind of parenting that produces healthy, well-adjusted children. We think about love, we think about affection, we think about good communication, we think about creating boundaries and limits for our kids and creating many opportunities for them to learn. However, these insights are not shared by everyone. We were alarmed last year to realise the extent of the problem when children are growing up in a home where those magic moments don't occur, where the chats, where the cuddles, the lessons in life that you gain from interacting with your parents are just not there. The Australian child maltreatment study shocked us in some ways. 32% of children have experienced physical abuse, 31% emotional abuse. 40% of adult mental health outcomes are attributable to child maltreatment, and it increases the risk of things like substance abuse, crime, and violence. The great temptation, of course, is to believe that we need a heavy-handed interventionist approach with families who are struggling. This is exactly the kind of finger-pointing families don't like. I would argue the single most important thing we can do to promote the well-being of children and to reduce child maltreatment is to make high-quality, evidence-based, culturally informed parenting support available to all families. This is simply not a government priority. Most governments can't even tell you how much they spend on parenting programs, so the accountabilities are not there. We don't know whether it's increasing, decreasing, staying the same. I think the important issue to realise is that we need a different approach. We need an approach that focuses on prevention rather than cure. Now, I've devoted my career to developing a public health approach to parenting support we call PPP, the Positive Parenting Program. It began as my PhD thesis, looking at the effects of teaching parents self-management skills when they had disruptive, difficult preschool-aged children. And it's now evolved into a global phenomenon. It's being delivered in many different countries, very different countries. For example, Singapore, Chile, Czechia, the United Kingdom, the United States, and many other places. If we just reflect for a moment about the shared journey of parenthood, there are many things that unite parents around the world, many more things than divide us on the basis of language and culture. Just consider this example. You're in a public place and your child is having a massive meltdown. It looks very similar whether you're in Tehran, in a bazaar, whether you're in Tokyo in a shop or you're in Brisbane in a supermarket. It looks the same and has a similar function. It's almost universally embarrassing to parents, and there's a strong motivation to turn it off quickly to get out of the spotlight. The thing we realise about parenting is that parents are pretty resourceful. If they can relate to the parenting situation, namely being embarrassed in public by a child who's misbehaving, they're often highly attuned to what a solution might look like, regardless of where it comes from. I think the important thing to remember is that parents are seeking guidance and advice that will provide them with the tools that they need to promote the well-being of their children. So, in the development of a parenting program, we ask the question, well, what are the principles of parenting that might bind and unite parents from very different places around the world? So we can ask the question, what is positive parenting? What does it look like? The first principle is having a safe, loving, and interesting environment where there are plenty of age-appropriate things for children to do, to keep busy. The second idea is to have a positive learning environment where there's plenty of praise and encouragement, and also parents are responsive to those magic moments when children initiate interactions, want to show us something, want to share something with us, they'd like our help with something, and we're tuned in to those moments. The third principle is using consistent rules, boundaries, and limits. It's amazing how children's self-control over emotions is strongly influenced by the encounters that they have when they're upset, when they're distressed, and how parents handle children in that situation. In order to help children thrive, however, we need to be realistic. We need to have realistic expectations of our kids, of ourselves. There's no gold medals for martyrdom in parenthood. We should never be trying to search for perfection, but we need the skills of also communicating with others who are taking care of our kids, the grandparents, the teachers, the early childhood educators. And finally, we need to take care of ourselves as parents. If you're miserable, lonely, isolated, you're living in a conflictual situation, you're overwhelmed with stress, you have a mental health problem or a substance abuse difficulty, it is so much more difficult to be consistent, calm, patient, and responsive to our children. So when we think about parenting programs and we think about what we're trying to accomplish with them, you'd sort of ask the question, well, why do so few parents participate? In Australia, 3/4 of parents never attend any kind of parenting program, and less than 10% will attend an evidence-based program where there's some understanding of what works and how to make it work. So the question that we need to ask is that if we're trying to engage parents and the default is you don't do a parenting program, we have to put this in the context of realising that the vast majority of the world's population grow up in homes where parents do not participate in any kind of formal parent education or support. They learn on the job, they learn through trial and error. Parents actually don't like being told how to raise their children. So therefore, the approach that we need to engage parents has to be highly respectful of the parent and their role. It has to be tuned in to and sensitive to the circumstances that the parent is experiencing in raising their children. And furthermore, we have to remind ourselves of what do we know about what parents are actually looking for. Well, surveys have shown that parents are wanting primarily brief, easy to access, high quality parenting advice that is addressing issues that are of concern to them, and it's being done in a way that is completely free of stigma. So in order to create such a response to what parents are seeking, we need to think about how to design a program that would be universal in its reach, completely destigmatised, and something that's just a healthy, normal thing you do. So the program we've developed, Triple P, many of you might ask, well, what's so different about this program than any of the hundreds of other parenting programs out there? First of all, it's not a single program. It's not a one-size-fits-all, it's a multi-level system of support. It's on a tiered continuum of intervention of increasing intensity or strength of intervention, but narrowing reach. In other words, fewer and fewer parents are participating or accessing the most intensive levels. It includes a media and communication strategy we call Stay Positive, with one fundamental message: it's healthy and it's normal to seek support in raising your children. And let's not think of the parenting action being over in the first 1,000 days of life. Every 1,000 days of life throughout life is important with respect to parenting and its important role in influencing our well-being. So Triple P actually has programs for each of these different age groups, from infancy through to adolescence. It's multidisciplinary. It uses flexible delivery options, and it's strongly evidence-based. Nothing comes into the Triple P system without careful evaluation. Now, an evidence base for a parenting support strategy incorporates a wide spectrum of things, from low-intensity media and communication campaigns right through to the most intensive forms of parenting support. And it's not the idea you do a single dose and that's it for life and you're all set. There are challenges at every successive stage of development, including transitioning to grandparenthood and beyond. So when we start to think about the design of a system and we start to think about an evidence base, well, what does this look like for Triple P? There are now 820 studies that have been done on Triple P, including over 400 evaluation studies. There's nearly 200 randomised clinical trials that have been conducted evaluating Triple P. And this has involved over 1,700 authors from over 500 institutions around the world from 42 countries. That is a pretty significant evidence base behind this program. And so when you start to think about building an evidence base that has the capacity to address the diverse concerns of a wide range of parents, it's a big challenge. Because if it's parenting support for all, we have to take that very seriously. We have to think about the needs of families in very unique circumstances. Parents of children with chronic illnesses, parents of children who have various forms of neurodiversity and developmental disabilities. We have to think of parents who themselves have had problems with substance abuse and mental health problems. The point that I'd make is this: that when we are looking at designing a strategy that can respond at a community level, and it's seen to be completely destigmatised, we have to ask the question of what might a program like this look like? We recently completed a large-scale population trial evaluating the effects of the Triple P system in 64 of the lowest socioeconomically disadvantaged communities in Queensland and New South Wales. Half received the Triple P system and the other half received care as usual. It included large group seminars, it included light touch discussion groups, it included group programs, and it included online programs. The vast majority of parents who participated in this study opted for seminars. 50% opted for seminars, 28% did online programs. What did we find? Remember, we were asking the question, could the implementation of this at scale reduce the level of child maltreatment in those communities? The answer is yes. We found a 25% decrease in the Triple P communities within 2 years of implementing the system. That is a significant impact. And when you think about the kinds of things that parents are reporting that happen to them when they participate in Triple P. They talk about their kids being happier, fewer behaviour problems, they're more confident, they're more consistent, they've got greater self-efficacy, lower stress, lower family conflict. This adds up to a very different environment for our children. So let me end by getting you to think about this question. What is the kind of community we want to create that would be a great place to raise a family? For me, it's a place that values and supports and celebrates the importance of parenting. It recognises that the well-being of children and families is a shared community responsibility. It respects a parent's role in determining the values, skills and behaviours they wish to encourage in their children and the parenting practices to get there. It promotes the social and cultural connectedness of families, and it supports family self-regulation and autonomy. It ensures parents are empowered so they can participate in important decision-making relating to their well-being. I would like to end with this thought. If we could create such a community, I believe we could create a society where compassion, tolerance, and nurturance are the norm, where violence is simply not tolerated, and where gender equity in parenting is a reality for most families. I call on governments everywhere to take this seriously and to invest in high-quality, culturally informed, evidence-based parenting support to set realistic but achievable and ambitious targets for the benefit of the current generation and many more to come.